Leveling in Destiny. Very hot topic right now. Very hot. A lot of discussion on Reddit. Had some discussion in stream. Hot topic. The reason it's so hot is because of Master Mode Vault of Glass. Now, I talked about Master Mode Vault of Glass in another video at length, if you want to go check that out. But today, I want to talk about why Bungie can probably never win in this situation, and why leveling is always going to be met with some sort of issue by the community. Spoilers, it's because Bungie is trying to appease a lot of different audiences at once. Another 20-minute video, I know, but this is a big topic. Alright, a lot to talk about. A lot of people out there don't like having to grind artifact levels to be high enough to take on Master Vault of Glass, which is the hardest PvE content in the game. It's definitely harder than GM Nightfalls, at least until you start approaching 1340 and higher, but from the way people make it seem, there's only about 18 people in the world who are higher than 1340, which obviously isn't true. I can sympathize with the plight of the non-grinder. After all, being walled off by a time commitment, even if the time commitment is supposed to be designed for people who play the game a lot, doesn't feel great. And again, even though I don't want the focus of the video to be Master Vault of Glass, I just want to reiterate that it's designed with the intent that you will be underleveled, and it is designed with the most hardcore and skilled players in mind. We've had many methods of leveling in Destiny, along with the feedback to go with those methods. When we first started out back in 2014, Destiny 1, the only way to get max level was from raid drops. I think Nightfall gave up to 28, I want to say, 28. D1 veterans are quite familiar with the Forever 29 meme, where it was very difficult to get to level 30, which was the game's first level cap. Or rather, not difficult, but it relied on very heavy RNG via the raid. Crota hard mode in the first expansion was level 33, which meant you would never out-level it because the highest you could get for that was level 32 when it was the relevant content. Now, people got mad about this. People got mad that you had to do the hardest content in the game to get to the max level, despite the fact that there was no need for max level if you weren't raiding, and especially if you weren't hard mode raiding, as the hard mode raid was the only time you would ever see content at those levels. Players were mad because people use hitting max level as a major benchmark in terms of beating the game, or beating an expansion or season or whatever you want. And not being able to hit max level sucked for those people because the feeling of completing something or hitting the max feels good, and they didn't get that feeling. People who are not fulfilled are usually more likely to quit the game and never return. Eventually, after quite a while, we got to a point where you could get to max level without needing the raid, but the raid would help you get more drops, thus getting you to the cap faster. But the feedback here was that if you weren't doing an activity that gave you some levels, it felt pointless to play those activities at all. Bungie's partial answer to that was the seasonal artifact, which gave you power levels on top of getting gear drops, and you leveled it by just playing the game, and you could do it as much as you wanted. So now you can get levels by just playing the game and through those pinnacle and powerful reward sites. Destiny is saved, except that it's not. Bungie introduced the power and pinnacle cap systems in Shadowkeep, as well as artifact leveling, where the power cap was 950, but the pinnacle cap was 960, with pinnacle rewards only coming from certain pieces of content. Again, you no longer only had the raid as the way to get to the cap, although it was still faster to include raiding. The hopes of the power versus pinnacle system was to hopefully send a signal to more casual players by saying that they hit the power cap and thus could feel like they completed a season, while allowing hardcore players to keep pushing their levels, even if those extra levels didn't really end up meaning a whole lot. The main advantage was simply being further along when the next season started. I don't remember the exact dates, but it was also during this time that Bungie changed a lot of easy, powerful reward sources to generate pinnacle rewards instead, giving more chances to level outside of the endgame. The Shadowkeep era comes and goes, into Beyond Light we go, and not much really changes there. However, in Season 14, Bungie reduced the level grind in between seasons from 50 to 10, which had been a thing for quite a while, Probably because they realized that having to grind 50 levels every season just to get back to where we were power-wise was monotonous and boring and only sought to inflate playtime. I'll be the first to tell you that this was a fantastic move because the concept of leveling just to get back to where we were was not very fun. It served minimal function in the game other than to keep people playing. It is a very empty experience that I think exists because there isn't another system to take its place. But to think that Bungie is going to remove the grind to enter endgame content, I think at the moment is laughable, at least outside of expansion drops. There's always going to be some form of grind in this game. Now, what that grind consists of is always up for interpretation. In traditional MMOs, a lot of endgame PvE content is locked behind gear walls. You must do tier 1 activities to gear up to tier 1 power levels, and then with that tier 1 power you can go into tier 2 to gear up for tier 2 power to go to tier 3, etc, etc. You're not going to find tier 3 power level items in low level tier 1 content because the difficulty does not match the reward. Destiny no longer has this because people didn't like it. You can get a max power level item from the raid, difficult, and also from the strike playlist, easy. However, what constitutes power in Destiny is not only your power level, but the quality of your weapons in terms of perks or mods. Whereas in a traditional MMO, your weapon is essentially just another stat stick like the rest of your gear. This is where the lines start to blur when it comes to power, as a vendor weapon in Destiny might not have the power level of a raid weapon, but the perks could be way better, thus making it a better weapon, hence more powerful. And because infusion exists, you can take a high power level item, which you can get from easy content, and throw it at that good vendor weapon, and now the vendor weapon has end game power levels without ever stepping foot in an end game piece of content. I'm not going to say that the ability to bring a vendor weapon up to endgame power levels is a bad thing in Destiny, it's just how the game works right now. So you can get tier 3 power level gear from tier 0 and tier 1 activities in Destiny. This essentially means that you never actually need to do endgame content to reach the endgame, and thus Bungie cannot play gatekeeper via skill. They do not know how you got to endgame power levels, whereas in a traditional MMO, there is a more direct path. You need to have beaten X thing to get to a certain gear level, which means they can tell approximately how skilled you are, although having the time to invest into getting those things done is absolutely a factor too. In Destiny, the equivalent would be looking at Master and GM Nightfall completions? Raid completions, maybe? Master VOG is one of very few times in recent memory that Bungie has tried to play gatekeeper, but since they can't do it by skill, they have to do it by time. Now, I'm not saying that more time invested means you're more skilled, but what I will say is that more time invested, or higher power levels, increases the probability that you are skilled, because, and I'm going to quote Iverson on this one, we're talking about practice. More hours in a thing can mean that you're better at it than someone who hasn't put in as many hours, generally speaking. And this, combined with the fact that Master VOG was designed for elite players from the get-go, is why I think Master VOG is 1350. Master VOG is 1350 because it was designed to challenge the people already at those GM power levels because of what I literally just said. If you were grinding hard enough that you were GM Nightfall ready when both GMs and Master VOG came out, you were much more likely to be of a higher skill level because you are of the belief that you can do those activities, hence being in the audience that Bungie wanted to challenge. If Master VOG came out at 1340, it would not be a challenge to the very people it was designed to be challenging for. However, that hasn't stopped people from asking why Master VOG simply could not have had contest mode active for it. Contest mode making it so the game automatically scales you to be a certain amount of levels under the enemies, despite the fact that if you're struggling with Master VOG at 15 levels under, you're going to be even worse off if Bungie kept contest at 20 levels. I don't know where people are getting the idea that if contest mode was on that they would struggle less, but I guess that's not really the point. Contest mode was requested because it is accessible. But now we're going to get into the meat of the video here. Yeah, that first part wasn't even the meat. That was a breadstick, so buckle up there, Olive Garden. Destiny has generally been pretty accessible in terms of power levels or gear, although it could use some help in the LFG side of things, but that's not really what I'm arguing today. Destiny has been very accessible, allowing people to try everything in the game without too many barriers. But what is accessibility really? Is accessibility the opportunity to try something? Or is accessibility the potential to actually complete an activity? Contest mode is extremely accessible. Anyone can try it. But it's also accessible in the way that a Maserati dealership is accessible. You can walk in the front door. You're probably not leaving with a Maserati, though. Hot take coming in. I'd argue that making Master VOG 1350 is more accessible than contest mode because at least in the 1350 mode, you can slowly claw your way up the level ladder and make it easier, aka more accessible, and you only need to be 1330 to access it in the same way that contest mode would have challenged you. People are used to the game being accessible, and anything that can block players to that access is always met with negativity, justified or not. I have no problems with the whole game being accessible, but I also don't mind if Bungie wants to have one or two things dedicated to the hardcore audience, whatever their interpretation of hardcore might mean. In this case, it's probably time-based. People just aren't used to the idea of not being able to play something in this game because Bungie hasn't really flirted with content designed for the hardcore. It's just that right now, hardcore means you have a lot of time to go grind levels, and the problem is that people don't like grinding levels. Finally, Datto, it took you 12 minutes to get there. I was getting there, chill out. Why do we not like grinding levels in Destiny? On the gear side of things, most of the issues stem from the RNG involved. Everyone has a story about how they got like 5 gauntlets in a row from their pinnacles, or they just can't get that last chest piece that they need to hit the pinnacle cap on their gear. Better luck protection and gear detection on that side of things would help cut down on a lot of those issues. That is something I believe to be solvable and or is something that doesn't require a significant philosophy or design shift. On the artifact side of things, well, people just don't like grinding XP. Why do we not like grinding XP? Because when you think of XP grinding, you think of bounties, and playing Bounty Simulator is not very fun. You think of grinding the same strike playlist, fighting for kills, fighting against your teammates, and lost sectors. Seasonal challenges are a great way to get a ton of XP, but they can still feel like chores to people. People don't want to feel forced to go do what feels like the equivalent of chores just to be able to access the endgame activities in GM Nightfalls and Master VOG, even if the intent is that only a select group is able to access them. Some have been advocating for the seasonal artifact to be capped so that way people do not feel pressured to keep playing and leveling and to keep accessibility at the forefront, maybe partly to feel like they no longer have an obligation to keep playing during a season when they feel done, giving a sense of completion in a given season. Although, if artifact leveling is capped, do we even really need it anymore? Artifact and gear leveling is also zero indicator of skill whatsoever within Destiny. We don't have a skill-based leveling system, nor do you get the experience from leveling that you would need to get better at the game. Some people have been advocating for activity completion to be the leading generator of experience points, with harder content potentially giving more. I'm not sure how Jimmy Two Sticks, who doesn't raid or do Nightfalls, would feel about that, but it is a similar system to how gearing works currently. Endgame makes you go faster. But ultimately, any changes here would require much more thought than just changing some bad luck protection. Let's loop back to the contest mode thing. What if Bungie just made everything contest mode to make it so they get to have the difficulty levels that they want to set while not forcing players to grind so much that they don't like it? Well, I would have to ask what the point of leveling would even be in Destiny at that point. What's the point of it now? Well, it's to keep you playing. That's obviously part of it. Part of it is having a goal at hand season over season. Reach max level, max power. MMOs have gear grinds. They have level grinds. It's just what they have. It's what they do. But again, I'm the first to tell you, I was beyond stoked that they dropped the levels from 50 to 10 per season, because leveling is an empty experience season over season. It is empty. I do it because it's there, and to do Grandmaster Nightfalls to get a title that I already have, change its color from purple to gold, and to make a tiny number in that gold colored font go up by 1 every like 3 months. And this season, Vault of Glass title. It's a hollow experience. Maybe that's just because I'm at the top end. Maybe I'm jaded. Maybe I've just done this so long that it holds no value to me anymore. I don't know. But it is a very empty experience in its current form. When a new leveling goalpost is added in a traditional MMO, it's usually a new set of goalposts, a new raid tier, new dungeon, zone, filled with gear, or something like that. And in a traditional MMO, it takes much longer to max yourself out gear-wise compared to Destiny. You could go weeks without significant upgrades. At least I used to back in the day when I used to play WoW. You can't have that in Destiny. I mean, you can, but it's a result of horrific RNG. When a new season rolls around in Destiny, sure, we get new story content to do. Bungie's been stepping it up with that. Seasonal activity, guns to collect, and that's good and all. But leveling and endgame content-wise, new goalposts in terms of gearing and leveling don't feel like they're being made so much as they're being picked up from the previous season and just planted into the new seasons. So what happens if we just straight up removed leveling from the game in that case? It's one of those things that sounds really neat right now because the experience is frustrating. I just couldn't say if it would work out. If leveling was removed, what does progression in Destiny look like? Would you ever feel like you're progressing outside of, say, season ranks? Do you even need that feeling in Destiny? Does the feeling of progression with leveling right now feel good or bad? Do you even feel like you're progressing with leveling in the game as it is right now? Would we replace leveling with anything? Another progression system? What about nothing? Is that feeling of progression season over season important to players? Do we just carry on like nothing happened? Would the grind experience feel better? Do you see how this is a much more complex issue than you might have originally thought? Is the problem that maybe there isn't enough fulfilling content for casual players? What does that content even look like? The point of this video was not to solve leveling. The point was to show that it's not the most fun, and to fix it is not a simple tweak. It would take weeks of discussion and research just to even get the ball rolling. Part of it is that Destiny is an MMO experience in hyperspeed. It has MMO qualities that need to be completed within not MMO-like timeframes. But part of it is just the many conflicting interests of a wide range of players, and Bungie reacting to that feedback in best a way that they can. Like I've said before, I think there are more pressing matters in the game right now to the point where leveling is probably going to be taking a back seat for a while, because no matter what Bungie does, someone's going to be mad about it. But I guess that goes for pretty much everything, huh? Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.